It was past midnight, and the airport lights buzzed faintly overhead. A young mother stood in the corner of a quiet boarding gate, her toddler curled up beside her on a bench, fast asleep with a ragged teddy bear in hand. She clutched a borrowed phone tightly, her voice trembling as she whispered into it. "Can I just stay overnight on the flight? I don't need food or anything, just a place for me and my son to rest." What she didn't know was that the man sitting 2 rows behind her, overhearing every word, was the CEO of the very airline she was flying with. He paused. And then quietly stood up. "Stay with me, because what happened next changed both of their lives forever." If this story moved you, don't forget to like, comment, share with someone who needs hope today. Subscribe our channel Kindness Talks for more real-life inspired emotional stories. The airport was colder than she expected. Amelia rubbed her hands together, trying to warm her fingers, which had turned stiff from the long day of travel. She had no gloves, no coat thick enough for the freezing terminal, and certainly no backup plan. Her son, Eli, just 4 years old, had long fallen asleep on the bench beside her, head resting on her folded hoodie and a tiny thumb still tucked into his mouth. He didn't know how scared his mother truly was. Amelia had been through worse. Or at least, she thought she had. When her husband died suddenly 2 years ago in a car accident, she found herself in a world spinning too fast: bills, job loss, eviction, single motherhood. She had moved across the country to stay with her estranged sister, but the arrangement had dissolved within weeks after a bitter argument. Now, she was flying to Chicago with the last of her money, chasing the promise of a low-paying job as a live-in caregiver. But things hadn't gone to plan. Her connecting flight had been cancelled due to snow. With no hotel vouchers, no friends, and barely any money left, Amelia faced the harsh truth: she and Eli had nowhere to sleep that night. So she did something she'd never done before. She borrowed a stranger's phone, hers had long been disconnected, and called the airline's customer service line. The woman on the other end listened as Amelia explained her situation, voice cracking with exhaustion. "I know flights aren't hotels," she whispered, "but if there's any chance, if I could just sit on the plane overnight, maybe even the empty one, my son's so tired, and I can't afford a hotel." The silence that followed felt longer than her entire journey. Behind her, quietly, a man in his early 40s sat perfectly still in a navy coat, laptop on his knees. His name was Charles Whitman. Nobody recognized him, he liked it that way. He had built his airline, Jet Era, from the ground up after starting out as a luggage boy at a small regional airport. Tonight, he was flying back from a humanitarian conference, thinking deeply about how to make his business more human-focused. But then he heard her voice. Not the words, those were muffled through distance and emotion. It was the tone. The desperation. The kind he had once heard from his own mother, asking for help after their power was shut off in winter. He looked up. He watched Amelia as she hung up the phone with a barely audible "thank you," eyes glassy, shoulders slumped. She didn't cry. She just sat down next to her son and covered him with her jacket. And that's when something shifted in Charles. He closed his laptop, stood up, and walked over. "Ma'am," he said gently. "I couldn't help overhearing. I work with the airline. Maybe I can help." She looked up, startled. She was used to brushing people off. But there was something steady and warm in his expression. "I'm not looking for charity," she said defensively. "Just rest. For my boy." Charles nodded slowly. "You're not getting charity. Just a little kindness." He pulled out his ID. The airline badge under his name said CEO. Amelia's eyes widened, but all she could do was stare. "I have a quiet room on the executive side of the terminal. Has a couch, food, heating. No catch. You can use it tonight." Amelia hesitated. "I won't come in. My assistant can let you in, and I'll sleep in the lounge," he smiled gently. "I've been through tough nights too. No one deserves to go through one with a child in the cold." She didn't know whether to cry or say thank you. So she just nodded. As she and Eli were escorted away to the VIP lounge, she turned back once, and saw Charles sitting alone on a bench, deep in thought. The next morning, Amelia awoke to a quiet knock at the lounge door. A tray of warm breakfast had been left for her and Eli: fruit, oatmeal, juice, and coffee. There was also a note: "Good luck in Chicago. We're rooting for you, CW." She didn't see Charles again at the airport. But something about that night had lit a fire in her heart. Maybe she wasn't invisible after all. 3 months passed. The job in Chicago didn't work out. The woman Amelia was supposed to care for had passed away before she arrived. But Amelia didn't crumble. She used the bus card Charles's team had included in the envelope that morning and started working at a diner nearby. It was grueling, but she saved every penny. She found a daycare that took Eli part-time, and though life was hard, they were surviving, and slowly, thriving. One day, the diner's door chimed, and in walked a man in a clean suit, with slightly disheveled hair and tired eyes: Charles. He was speaking at a conference nearby and stopped in for coffee. But when he saw Amelia behind the counter, wiping down a table, he froze. She looked up. Recognition dawned in both their faces. "Mr. Whitman?" she asked, stunned. He smiled. "Amelia." She hurried over, embarrassed and proud all at once. "I didn't get a chance to say thank you properly," she said. "You changed everything for us." He looked around, taking in the small but cozy diner, the pictures of Eli taped behind the counter, and the fire in her eyes. "You did that yourself," he said. "I just opened a door." They sat for a few minutes, sipping coffee. He asked about her life, her plans. She told him she wanted to go back to school, maybe even work in hospitality or aviation. Something where she could help people like she once was. Charles smiled, then stood up and handed her a card. It read, "Jet Era Foundation, Women Rising Program. We offer scholarships, paid internships, support for single parents. It's new, but I think you'd be a perfect first applicant." Tears welled up in Amelia's eyes. She couldn't speak. Sometimes, all it takes is one moment of compassion, one person who sees you, one hand that reaches out when you're at your lowest. Amelia didn't need a miracle. She just needed someone to notice. Be that someone. Because one kind act can change everything.